100 billion kilowatt-hour is the void that Vietnam has to fill in the next 3 years to satisfy its thirst for energy in this rapid development stage. The total demand will even escalate in 2030 at 570 billion kilowatt-hour, 3 times higher than the current need. In the meantime, traditional and major sources of power such as coal and gas are depleting and nuclear power was halted. This is a challenge, but also motivation for the renewable energy sector to develop in the coming time. In the following clip, we will learn more about how renewable energy approach became the world's best choice and an emerging industry in the Vietnam market.
Solar power, a typical type of renewable energy, is currently the fastest developed power source of the world. In 2006, the total amount of solar power produced in the whole world only stood at 6 gigawatts. However, the number rose to 303 gigawatts after just 10 years, and that was 30% higher than the figure the previous year. Currently, there has been a boom of solar power plants in many parts of the world, making solar power cheaper than fossil fuel power. The government of Vietnam on April 11th issued a new regulation on solar power price. Accordingly, solar power from plants will be purchased at $0.09 per kilowatt-hour. According to the International Energy Agency or IEA, renewable energy accounted for 13.2% of power supply in 2012. The number climbed to 22% in 2013 and is expected to be at least 26% by 2020.
However, there are challenges as well as misconceptions that hinders Vietnam's renewable energy approach. To clear misunderstandings and bring towards a more positive picture of Vietnam's renewable energy sector, we invite today to our studio Mr. Koos Nephiest, Renewable Energy Advisor for international agencies and the government of Vietnam, and also Director for Climate Sense Vietnam. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
The topic of renewable energy has been mentioned a lot lately, but again, how did renewable energy become a prominent trend in the world's energy sector?
The most important thing is that a number of countries in Europe and the Americas and also in Asia, of course, have supported renewable energy for a number of decades, in particular wind energy and solar energy. Now, today, the prices have become so low internationally that developing countries can start using it to their benefits. Technology is mature, it is developed. That means that we now know how to do it. The efficiencies of the technology have become quite high.
How is it a more feasible and suitable approach than compared to using fossil fuel and importing power to ease the power shortage of Vietnam?
It's not even that it is cheaper, but it is cleaner. So at the moment, Vietnam is struggling with its coal power waste, the result of using coal, burning coal, both air pollution but also the solid waste. So these environmental advantages, they are very clear from renewable energy sources, and the disadvantages are for coal. There are many people who are saying that there are certain disadvantages of renewable energy, and they need to be understood, and they are true, such as what we call intermittency. You know, the sun does not shine at night, the wind does not blow every moment. Of course this is true, but as I have said already, many countries have dealt with that issue. They know how to store energy, they know how to smoothen the curve. An example is that if you have 2 windmills, one at each side of the country, the chances that at one side of the country there is wind are quite reasonable. So the more spread you have, the more chances that you have a fairly constant supply.
Without available natural resources, capital and manpower, is it possible for Vietnam to develop renewable energy as a vital source of power for the country?
I believe yes. And in fact, I believe that if you want to build a few wind parks or a few solar parks, it can be much faster than building a more or less traditional coal-fired power plant, even faster than a gas-fired power plant, with the available human resources and technology already inside Vietnam. Now, interestingly, Vietnam actually already exports equipment for solar power and for wind power, and very few Vietnamese seem to know this. So I am not at all worried about lack of capacities or knowledge, no. I think other industries have also proven that the Vietnamese industry is incredibly dynamic. And actually the best evidence of that is the absence of a national market, yet the presence of export.
One of the largest scale and few megawatt-sized renewable energy equipment manufacturers in Vietnam is Boviet Solar, with about 90% of the production line from China. This factory at Boviet can produce a 1.5 square meter solar panel in only 6 hours and in mass production.
Major customer just like United States, maybe 80%, and Europe, EU, like German, like France, like Netherlands, about 20%. In the not so far future, if the Vietnam want to install more and more, I mean at least more than megawatt size system, then we are just more than willing to deliver our product into the Vietnam.
However, the highly advanced production chain of Boviet is not yet adapted by Vietnamese workers.
Mấu chốt đều là sử dụng là các máy móc tự động, và có công đoạn dưới thì chúng tôi ví dụ như là đóng thùng, đóng khung thì chúng tôi sẽ sử dụng là nhân công Việt Nam.
This case is not the overall situation in Vietnam. Phu Lac Wind Power Project was initiated by Vietnamese power company last year at the investment of about 48 million US dollars. The Denmark technology-based project is operated by mostly Vietnamese workers.
Hầu hết là các cái thiết bị điện gió với cái thiết bị chiếm khoảng 75-80% của tổng mức đầu tư dự án là chúng ta phải đi mua từ nước ngoài. Hiện nay với trình độ của Việt Nam nói chung là chúng ta có thể là tự chủ được trong vòng cái công nghệ về vận hành và sửa chữa trong thời gian tới.
Also, according to Tin, renewable energy technology is still a new concept in Vietnam and needs more investment to develop. However, some companies still employ 100% of Vietnam's resources, including technology, personnel, and investment. One of them is Vũ Phong Solar V, founded in 2009.
Người sáng lập công ty Vũ Phong là anh Phạm Nam Phong, vốn là một kỹ sư ô tô. Thì đây là bắt nguồn từ cái đam mê cá nhân của ảnh. Ảnh thích những cái sản phẩm công nghệ, và lúc đó thì Việt Nam mình chưa phát triển về điện mặt trời, nhưng mà khi mà ảnh cập nhật xu hướng thế giới thì ảnh đã biết là trước sau gì nó cũng sẽ thành xu hướng, nên là ảnh đã tập trung vào nó.
Vũ Phong Solar V is currently the only firm in Vietnam that sells Vietnamese state-based solar charge controller and high-frequency inverter. More than 90% of the firm's output serve the domestic market, with some projects being implemented in Cambodia and Myanmar.
Many of the large-scale power plants in Vietnam use foreign technology, whereas Vietnam is still in the early stage. What do you think about the potential of the renewable energy sector in Vietnam regarding this fact?
I've spoken with some of the foreign invested companies, the managers there, and they are telling me very clearly that their focus is export for the moment. But they are very interested also in the emergence of a national market. So as soon as the national market arrives here, they will be very keen to sell as much as possible here inside Vietnam. It is also true that there are already fully Vietnamese-owned companies that are fully capable of making every single part of some of those systems nationally. Now, both the foreign invested companies and the national companies will grow, and they will train people, and they will also look for suppliers nationally as soon as the growth in the market occurs. I would like to add that maybe one of the motivations for foreign companies to come to Vietnam is actually the availability of relatively high-skilled labor. This is required for a relatively sophisticated manufacturing process.
Is the gap in expertise a big problem for the development of renewable energy in Vietnam?
I think the gap of expertise is there in a number of maybe somewhat surprising areas. For example, if you need to build wind parks, you need to erect windmills that are very high. They are maybe 100 meters high, or maybe even higher than that. The arms, the wings of the turbines, they are maybe 70 meters long. So these things are very large. You need to have sophisticated, highly skilled contractors to construct, to put everything together. For the time being, these lack of skills or these gaps mean that the relative price in Vietnam or the relative cost in Vietnam is still higher than in other countries. But you should not think of 10 years of learning. No, I think maybe 2 or 3 years of learning can already see a very significant improvement and closing of this gap. So I'm very hopeful and very positive about a rapid development potential.
Let's take a look at the following clip where we introduce a draft plan for the system of ocean wave power, one of the most sophisticated renewable energy types. It was completely designed by a Vietnamese engineer.
According to calculation, just 0.1% of the wave power in the world is enough to provide electricity for all mankind. Vietnam's 1 million square kilometers of sea is a great potential to develop this source of energy. Despite its complexity and unpopularity in Vietnam, a design of wave energy system has been drafted by the board of directors of VTV Manufacturing Mechanics Company. The technical principle of the design has been confirmed by Associate Professor Dr. Ngô Sĩ Lộc, lecturer at the Department of Hydraulic Machines and Automation, Hanoi University of Science and Technology. The designer reiterates that the investment level for 1 megawatt will be only $900,000, much cheaper than the world's average price of about $1.5 million. 70% of the equipment can be domestically manufactured. He is inviting companies and partners to cooperate and invest in the project.
Some people think that renewable energy in Vietnam is a luxury. What do you think about this?
I think this was true 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. It's no longer true today. If the regulation is fully in place, which is nearly the case, not yet, but nearly the case, I will put solar panels on my roof legally, and I will earn my money back by buying equipment on the market in Vietnam against the prices that they are charging today. In other words, it is already financially attractive for a private person, for the private sector. This is at a micro scale, at the scale of my house. Therefore, it is even more feasible or attractive at a larger scale because of the advantages. It is not a luxury. We have even calculated, we have run computer models for the future of the Vietnamese economy, comparing a number of reasonable assumptions about the development of the price of coal into the future. And we compare investment in that, in coal power, with a reasonable conservative estimate of the development of price and technology with solar and wind power. The conclusion surprises many people, and that is that the economy will grow faster if you have more more solar and more wind. Of course, also other forms of power, but these are the two most important ones.
What is your prediction of the development of the price of renewable energy in Vietnam?
Internationally, the prices are reducing almost every month. You can read in the newspaper another report. This will also happen in Vietnam. It is internationally available technology. The prices go down in other countries. It is unavoidable that they also go down in Vietnam. Now, why is this the case? The case is that in Europe, but now also in China and India, in the United States, also South America, also Africa, and of course Korea, Japan, Australia, many countries are investing more and more and more. The larger the scale, the cheaper the technology becomes, the higher the efficiency. Vietnam is benefiting if it goes for it. Now, there have been international analysts who have been predicting the renewable energy price for the past 20 years. Each year they make a prediction. And each year they are adjusting the previous prediction downwards.
How will the development of renewable energy affect employment in the power sector?
We look at international data, and what they show is that the number of people employed in the solar and wind energy sector is much higher than in the traditional gas and coal sector, much higher in different countries. And the reason is that it is technology focused. It is not fossil fuel focused. So what are fossil fuels? Fossil fuels, you get them out of the ground. With coal, you have individual miners, but they are already using machines, big tractors and trucks. So that's where the employment is. With oil and with gas, they drill. The drilling takes labor and skills, but the number of people involved in the continuous drilling is quite limited, actually. And then you talk about the quality of work. Mining is not an easy job. It is a dirty job. It is not good for your health. Many miners complain of that. Whereas manufacturing solar or wind equipment may have fewer health hazards, although there needs to be taken care of as well. It requires higher levels of education to do certain jobs there.
According to Vietnam's Institute of Energy, by July 2017, there have been over 100 registered wind power projects with a total capacity of more than 7,000 megawatts in Vietnam. The figure for solar power is over 110 projects with total capacity of about 17,000 megawatts, while biomass attracted about 40 projects of 600 megawatts. However, according to participants at the recently held Vietnam Renewable Week, it takes more efforts to change the status of registered to implemented.
Given the current state of legislation and the way the purchase power agreement has been written for solar photovoltaic power and does not allow banks and probably not even Vietnamese banks, but certainly international banks, from supporting projects.
In order to have a market, you have to make sure that you have a legal and policy framework in place. And that's, I think, the first step we need to address with the government and make sure that all the conditions are there for those private companies to sell the products on the market. For the last 18 months, we've seen some very positive development in the policy side.
The roadmap for Vietnam's renewable legal framework started since 2007. Apart from large-scale projects, there have already been implemented renewable energy projects for community-based benefits in small localities, such as the water filtration system using solar power in Tu Mai Commune in Dung District, Bắc Giang Province. It was installed with the support of Green ID 3 years ago.
Thích cái là nước sạch, dân lấy về dùng, ăn, uống trực tiếp. Nước này uống trực tiếp được, không phải đun.
With the price of 9 US cents per a 19-liter water container, locals here have saved a lot of money for daily expenses.
Nước sinh hoạt thì có thể dùng thoải mái hơn trước khi là mua quán thì là giá cả nó đắt hơn ạ. Thì bây giờ giá cả tiền thì nó rẻ hơn, thì nó rất phù hợp với mọi người, mọi nhà.
However, to fully implement a solar power system for each household is still a challenge in Vietnam.
Với các hộ gia đình thì khi phải đầu tư khoảng trên 100 triệu, 150 triệu cho một cái công suất nhỏ thì cái thời gian để chúng ta có thể thu hồi vốn so với cái giá điện. Giá điện hiện nay chúng ta là tương đối thấp, giá điện thông thường đấy, trên mạng lưới đấy. Thì so sánh như vậy thì điện mặt trời vẫn khá là đắt hơn so với cả giá điện trên mạng lưới.
The Renewable Energy Week 2017 also heard that a pilot project funded by Finland's ODA will install solar power system on some households in Vietnam. So far, it has attracted positive response from all surveyed households.
In the big picture, how far has Vietnam come in this sector, and what result can be achieved soon if the trend continues?
I heard that the amount of request for investment permissions in Vietnam for only solar PV, solar power, already requested, investment proposals already made today, is higher than Vietnam's plans, or similarly high than Vietnam's plans by 2030. A lot of this is foreign capital. Some of it requires domestic capital, meaning they are domestic investors. So if Vietnam gets the policies issued, if they are finalized, and they can be finalized within months, it can go very, very fast. So Vietnam has a lot of catching up to do with this, but it can catch up very fast. So some people say, easy. You can build solar power farms within 2 years, even sometimes faster. You can combine them with other projects. Wind power a bit slower, but also much faster than the big thermal power plants for coal and gas. So we believe that it can be extremely fast.
There are currently 77 large-scale renewable energy projects registered in Vietnam with total capacity of about 5,000 megawatt. This may not be enough for the country's rapidly rising demand for energy. However, according to experts, Vietnam's renewable energy sector is coming to the end of the preparation phase and will enter its take-off phase this year. One of the first steps of this process is the circular on the Prime Minister's decision on renewable energy development issued in April, which is expected to be announced by the Ministry of Industry and Trade in September. And that's the end of our BizLine program. For more of our programs and update, please log on to vtv4.vn or our YouTube channel at VTV4Go. Goodbye for now, and thanks for stopping by.